Good evening all. Today I will discuss with you about another topic in respiration chapter, that is types of respiration. Now types of respiration, before discussing the types, let's discuss about what is respiration. As I told you that respiration is nothing but the oxidation of food material of our body, the oxidation of food material in our body, that is respiration. So respiration actually after oxidation it will give energy. So in respiration mainly we are getting energy to do all the cellular activities. Now there are three types of respiration, and these three are according to the presence of oxygen or availability of oxygen. These three types are considered according to the availability of oxygen. So let's discuss about that. The food material, that is glucose, that is 6 carbon molecule. It transforms into pyruvate after respiration. This is 3 carbon molecule. So this pyruvate gives rise to some products. When there is absence of oxygen, when there is no oxygen at all, then after respiration we get ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. Ethanol is a 2 carbon molecule. Okay. So this is done in the absence of oxygen. So here we should write absence of oxygen, and it gives the product which is ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. Okay. Now the second type should be presence of oxygen. Because we have discussed absence of oxygen, now we should discuss presence of oxygen. So in presence of oxygen, the products will be carbon dioxide, water and energy. Now you can ask that at which places it will happen, at which organ actually. So when it is presence of oxygen, it will happen in mitochondria of cell. You know mitochondria. Mitochondria is the organs where the energy currency is produced. That means when it is in presence of oxygen, it will happen in mitochondria, and when it is in absence of oxygen, it is in yeast or in lower organisms. Yeast or lower organisms. Okay. As it is in absence of oxygen, it is known as anaerobic respiration. I have told you in my previous session that there are two types of respiration, that is aerobic and anaerobic. So when it is in absence of oxygen, we can call it anaerobic. When it is in presence of oxygen, we can call it aerobic. Now, there is one special case also, where the respiration is happened in lack of oxygen. It is not absence of oxygen, it is not sufficient amount of oxygen, it is in lack of oxygen. So when it is in lack of oxygen, the product will be lactic acid and energy. Again, a lactic acid is 3-carbon molecule. So you can ask me that where it is happened, where in our body cell there is lack of oxygen. Well, that is in muscle cells. How? After a very vigorous exercise or workout or whole day activity, your muscles will get fatigue. Why? Because in your vigorous activity, all the oxygen has been utilized. Now there is no sufficient oxygen in those muscle cells. Then in lack of oxygen, there is respiration where lactic acid and energy is produced. So, if you note, in 3 cases, energy production is common. That means whenever there is respiration, energy must be produced there. So again, I am recapping so that you won't be confused. In absence of oxygen, it gives ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. Ethanol is a 2-carbon molecule. It can be seen in yeast or lower organisms. As it is performed in the absence of oxygen, it is known as anaerobic respiration. Then we have come to that procedure where it is happening in presence of oxygen. So when it is in presence of oxygen, it gives carbon dioxide, water and energy. It can be seen in mitochondria. As it is happening in the presence of oxygen, it is known as aerobic respiration. And the third one is in lack of oxygen. How lack of oxygen? As I told you that when you have done a vigorous walk schedule, or you have done whole day activities, your muscle cells will be fatigued, because in these activities all the almost all the oxygen of your cell has been utilized. Not all, almost all. Maximum oxygen has been utilized. Now a very minimum portion of oxygen is left then, but respiration is necessary. In that case, in lack of oxygen it will happen, and it gives the product lactic acid and energy. As I told that in 3 cases you can see that energy is common. That means whenever there is respiration, there is energy, and this energy is stored in ATP, the energy currency of our body, that is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. The energy that is produced in these 3 cases is stored in this ATP, that is energy currency of our body, and then it will be used in our cellular activities and in our various activities. So this is all about the types of respiration, where you can see that glucose molecule is transformed into pyruvate, and then pyruvate is going through these 3 processes, and these are the cases where you can see aerobic and anaerobic respiration. The case where it is lack of oxygen, that is also considered as anaerobic, because there is no sufficient oxygen there through which the cell can do proper respiration. So this case is also considered as anaerobic respiration. Okay, so basically we are having 2 types of respiration according to the availability of oxygen: aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So these are the 3 places where we can observe it: anaerobic, in absence of oxygen, in yeast and lower organism. When we are writing absence of oxygen, that means there is total scarcity of oxygen. There is no oxygen at all. But when we are talking lack of oxygen, that is actually the oxygen is not sufficient there. And in presence of oxygen, that means there is sufficient oxygen. So these 3 are the types of oxygen where energy is produced in 3 cases, which is the main part of respiration. As we know that respiration means to give energy to the cells, to the tissues, for the cellular activities. So here we can see that it is so much true, and that is why respiration is very much needed in our body. Through digestion only, through taking food only, we can't get energy. Our cells can't get energy for doing the cellular activities. There must be respiration by which the energy is produced, and our body, the cells of our body, will get energy to do the cellular activities. So this much for today's session. In my next session we will discuss with some very important topic like this. Till then, bye, have a nice